winter is still with us, and on cold days like this, the birds still need plenty of protein. So don't forget to keep your feeders filled up with seed. We just got through taking care of ours today, and the birds, I think, are really glad that we did. Well, we want a lot of color in the spring, and if you didn't plant any tulips or daffodils and you're wishing you had some, go to the nurseries and garden centers. They still have plenty of spring color available in the instant form, and that's in the form of pansies, Johnny Jump Ups, and still some of the ornamental kales and cabbages. Now this is a planting that Brenda put in last fall, and it's a mixture of pansies and Johnny Jump Ups in sort of a ripple effect. And the thing I want to emphasize here is that these were planted very closely together, 6 inches apart. When you buy your pansies, don't be stingy. Make sure that you put them together in a massed effect and get enough for a nice spot of color in a small area of the garden. Now moving on around the corner, we have some that are interspersed with some tulips that are coming up in the garden. And it's going to be a nice blend of dark blues, light blues, and white, and we're real pleased with how this is looking, so long as we can keep the deer away. These were planted a little further apart to allow room for the tulips to come up, but take a look at that nice sign of spring on a cold, blustery day like this. Now with all pansies, you want to make sure that they get plenty of moisture, plenty of fertilizer. In fact, you might give them an additional feeding this time of year. And later in the season, if you think you want to sow your own pansy seed in the fall, the trick is to keep them cool. They need darkness and 5 days of cold temperatures to germinate. So what most people do is sow the seed, stick them in a refrigerator for 5 days, and then take them out and grow them under cool temperatures. And that's the key to getting pansies to come up and looking good for you. Well, over here in the back, against our trellis, we have some cool season annuals that we want to put in, and they're ones that a lot of people oftentimes don't think of, but that you can sow this time of year. One of those is Rocket Larkspur, and I have 2 examples here. These are some that were sown in about the 3rd week of January in our greenhouse. And larkspur is one that readily self-sows in the garden. It's related to delphiniums and gives you that tall blue and pink spiky appearance, and also will self-sow. And these are some small ones that I pulled up just out of our strawberry bed in our front yard before coming over here to give you an example of how easily they volunteer. Now if you're going to plant larkspur, you want to be cautious about one thing. All parts are poisonous, and so this is not a good thing to have if you have small children around, but they do have a beautiful effect in the garden. And back over here, we're getting ready to sow some sweet peas. And you can sow sweet peas directly. This is the time of year that you sow regular edible peas. Mid-March is the ideal time. Sweet peas, however, are not edible. In fact, the seed itself is poisonous. Now the key to getting sweet peas to pop up nicely and get going for you is to soak the seed about 1 to 2 days before sowing them in the ground, and that will help crack that seed coat. You can also take a small file and file the seed coat to get them growing. These are some that we started ahead of time in the greenhouse to get the jump on spring. Again, this is about the 3rd week of January that we got them started. I have some back here, and we're going to grow them against our trellis with tall spring flowering annuals such as larkspur and sweet peas. You know we get windy weather in Oklahoma. You may plant them on a nice day, but you can bank on them falling down, flopping over, and so you want to make sure that you plant them in sort of a protected area. I think against this trellis would be a nice place. Another tip on growing these is that if you're going to sow them directly from seed, you want to make sure that you sow them close enough together to be able to thin out. With regular garden peas, for instance, we sow them about 1 inch apart and then go back and thin them out to 1 every 3 inches. Now I'm going to plant these just about 6 inches apart because we want a nice full planting against this trellis. I want you to take a look at how healthy that root system is. This really is a super way to get them going. I sowed some sweet peas about 2 weeks ago in a container outdoors, and it was still too early, and unfortunately the seed rotted, and so there are some tricks to this. You also want to work a little bit of lime into the soil before you plant them because they like a little higher pH than certain garden flowers. And if you need to tie a little string near them just like you would regular edible peas. That'll work fine as well. Now there are some people that have what they call hardy sweet peas, and really probably what they're seeing in their garden is sweet peas self-sowing from year to year. One other thing that you can do is take your prunings. These are some peach tree prunings that we've bundled together, and you can do what's called brushing, and that means just bundling them together, put a piece of twine around the top real tight and looser around the bottom and lean those against a post, or get the bundle big enough that it can be self-standing in the garden, and you can sow your sweet peas or transplant them right around the base of that, and they should look pretty good in the garden. Well, let's go over to where our red, white, and blue garden will be. I'll give you some tips on sowing some other spring flowering annuals. In the next few weeks, this small garden in our ornamental landscape will be transformed into our patriotic red, white, and blue garden. We'll have a white picket fence across the back, and already we have some of our pre-planted color coming up. We have red, white, and blue tulips coming up, and we're getting ready to sow seed of bachelor buttons. What could be more patriotic than a mix of those? And we want to tip you off that this is one cool season annual that your kids can plant easily. The seed is good sized, it comes up quickly. One tip we want to give you is don't overwater them. Put them in an area where they get good drainage, because the base can rot and fall over easily. They are fairly drought tolerant. They may need some protection from wind again, because bachelor buttons get fairly tall, but that's a dependable cool season annual that you can put in. Now, keep in mind with all the cool season annuals that they're going to die off about midsummer, and you're going to need to plan to put some warm temperature annuals in as a follow-up, such as marigolds or zinnias or petunias, but they're going to be beautiful in just a few weeks. Well, over in the wildflower garden we have a few cool season annuals coming up that we sowed last fall, and I want to give you some tips on how to get those up and growing if you have really tiny seeds such as poppies and others that we find in wildflower mixes. If you look at the back of most wildflower seed mixes, a lot of the seed that we've been talking about is within that mix, and now's a great time to get that planted. Now in front of me is our small wildflower plot that we sowed last fall, and in it we have poppies and a mix of things that will give us some seasonal color, and they're starting to come up now. But it's not too late if you want to sow some wildflower seed. The trick is to prepare your site properly, and we talked about this several times on Oklahoma Gardening, but the key to success with wildflowers is not to just throw them out onto your lawn. You want to mow the area closely, rototill it just an inch and no deeper than that, because you don't want to bring up a lot of weed seed. Just slightly tick up the soil a little bit and loosen it up. And then mix your wildflower seed with sand. Now, I'm just going to demonstrate here. This is just some plain play sand that we have, but you would want to mix your seed with 1 part seed to 2 parts sand, and then just lightly scatter it on the soil. And that will help distribute the seed fairly evenly. And then the next trick you want to do is to just tamp it in with your feet real lightly. A lot of the wildflower seed needs light to germinate. That's how it has evolved over the years. And so you want to leave it on the surface, but press it in to have good seed to soil contact. And last of all, keep it moist. In order for a wildflower plot to come up successfully, you need to treat it just like a newly sown lawn. So make sure that you water it adequately, just with a light watering about twice a day for the next 4 to 6 weeks, and you too will have nice green plants coming up like ours. We have poppies coming up in here and a lot of other things as well. Last of all, if you have trouble with deer like we do, you might put out some soap that will help deter them from munching on the new plants that are coming up.
We hope you enjoyed this video. It's part of our OK Gardening Classics YouTube channel. You can also find more recent videos on our Oklahoma Gardening YouTube channel. And join us on social media for great gardening tips, photos, and discussion.